G'day folks, how you going? It's Brad here from the Headshot Guys. Today I just wanted to have a little chat about workshops, and one of the things that I realise about some of the people that I teach about portraits and lighting and photography in general is that they get very caught up with the gear. I ran a workshop on the weekend, and the young lady was quite surprised at the gear that I had. But I said the gear is built up over many years, and she was sort of contemplating what does she need to start. And I said you need to start very basic. You don't have to go out and spend $1 million on gear. So she had a Canon at an R something 100, which I think is an entry level camera. And I said, well, I'm a Nikon guy, so I don't know much about Canon, but I started with an entry level Nikon as a professional. I had an entry level Nikon, and I had a couple of lenses only, which I used to use predominantly, and they were zoom lenses generally. I think they went from about 24 up to about 105 or 120 or something, and then I think I had a longer zoom lens, but they covered the majority of the genres that I was ever asked to photograph. Even now, I don't have a big collection of lenses. I have a 24mm, which I used to use in the water a lot. I have a 50mm, I have an 85, and I have a 200 to 500. I also have a 24 to 75 or 70, I think it is, which I use for events, which is, not all that often do I shoot events anymore, but that's pretty much it. They're like 4 lenses. So my 85 obviously is the one I use most of all when I'm shooting headshots in the studio. So I don't have a wide range of lenses. She's also talking about cameras. What cameras should I buy? My general rule of thumb is I try and stay 2 models behind the latest model, and I do that because if you're continually updating, A, you're spending more money, but B, you've got to work out what am I actually getting for the extra money. Now, I think about it like this. My camera's a full frame 24 megapixel Nikon Z6. Okay, so there was the Z6 II. I think there's been the Z7, the Z8. Now we're up to the Z9, I think. So I'm actually a little bit further behind in my camera models. But right now, I don't see any reason to upgrade my camera model. 28 megapixels is more than enough to get, really good quality sized images. I know you can get 50 megapixels. You can buy, you can buy cameras that give you 100 megapixels. But I know my clients, most of the time, they're putting their headshots and their portraits online. So they are downsizing the images. So what's the point of having 100 megapixels when you're shooting in a studio with controlled lighting? It's just no point. And I know that most of my clients are not going out and putting them on the side of buses or on the side of buildings. And if they were doing that, 28 megapixels is more than enough to do that anyway. If you're shooting long range wildlife type stuff where you're blowing them up 1,000,000%, well then okay, yes, you can be justified. But I would find the only thing that I'd have to upgrade if I had a 100 megapixel camera is my computer stuff, because my hard drives wouldn't be big enough to hold all of the bigger imagery that I would be shooting. So there's a few trade-offs whenever you start talking about upgrading your cameras and those types of things. So just be aware, I guess. I made it very clear to her that she was talking about having studio lights and buying 3 or 4 of them. And I said, well, okay, that can become expensive if you go right off the bat and just buy studio lights. I certainly didn't do it like that. I used off-camera flash, the portable off-camera flashes for years and years and years before I upgraded to my internal system, my studio system, where now I've got an SK400 and a couple of AD400 and a couple of AD200s is what I use in the studio, and I find them more than adequate for any of those types of things. So be really, really careful that you're not succumbing to the marketing pitches from our camera companies and our lighting companies that you need to have the latest and greatest. And yes, you will see all the the YouTube dudes and dudettes that have the latest and greatest cameras and studio lights, but often they're getting sponsored. So they're not really affording to do it, they're getting sponsored. And again, you've got to be aware of your niche, what type of work you're doing. Is it relevant? Really not relevant for me as a headshot photographer in a studio to have a 100 megapixel camera. It's just no point, because people are reducing those images down so that they are more effective online. So why do I need 100 megapixels? So think about your gear. Don't fall into the trap of being a gearhead. I'm certainly not a gearhead. Yes, I do have some gear. I have a number of modifiers, and I have some stands, and I have almost a double setup so that I don't have to pull apart my studio every time I do a shoot off-site. But that has built up over many, many years, 15 years or something, 16 years. I've been a professional headshot photographer. So it's not something that I just ran out and bought overnight. So that's it. That's me talking about workshops, talking about gear. I hope that makes sense. More than happy to answer any questions. I do get questions occasionally from people who say, oh, what about this and what about this? Asking me what sort of camera you should buy is like asking me how long's a piece of string. You've got to look at what type of work you do, what type of images you take, and what sort of camera will suit those types of images. If you do sport, do you do portraits? Do you do landscape? Do you do in water? Etc., etc. So you've got to be conscious of buying a camera that suits the work you do, and stay within your budget as well. That's the other thing. What's the best camera you can afford, without putting your house up for mortgage. I'd love a Hasselblad. Who wouldn't? But I'm not about to spend $10,000 on a Hasselblad, $12,000 on a Hasselblad, as much as I would love one. And if Hasselblad are listening, you can always send me one, and I'm more than happy to talk about it. But I don't have $12,000 or $10,000 or even $8,000, I think, to spend on a Hasselblad camera. Okay, that's all you get. It's Brad from the Headshot Guys. See you next time.